Okay, so I was not going to comment on this whole Trayvon Martin shooting with George Zimmerman and all this that's so prevalent in the media right now, just because it's so prevalent, and I think everyone has their views on it, and it seems like everyone is sort of polarized on it, and it's real hard to say anything different or new about it. But when I heard about this interview that he did and some of the things coming out of the interview, it just made me want to look at it and maybe give my take on things just based on some of the things that I heard about it coming out of the interview. So I've got it queued up. I have not listened to it, watched it. I heard, or I read a couple of quotes from it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play it and react live to it whenever I feel the need to. And it's kind of a long interview. It's about 40 minutes. So I'm probably going to wind up editing this down to the parts that I think are the most significant things. This is my live reaction. I just want to make sure you're aware of that. I have not heard this interview yet, so these are my live reactions off the cuff to this interview. So let's go.
A lot of time has passed since this incident with Trayvon. How do you feel about it now that you've had some time to reflect on what has happened?
I haven't really had the time to reflect on it. When I was in jail, obviously I was in solitary confinement, and I had a lot of time to think and reflect.
Did that make any sense at all? Okay, this guy, that made no sense. Okay, all right, right off the bat. I mean, he's just not making any sense. Well, let's see. Maybe he'll make some sense out of that.
I just think it's a tragic situation, and I hope it's the most difficult thing I'll ever go through in my life. But
notice how it's all about him, right? Right off the bat, right off the bat, it's all about him. You know, there's nothing about his remorse. He's obviously, I mean, just first of all, he said something that didn't make any sense. I haven't had really time to reflect, and he's trying to basically deflect the question, and then he totally contradicts himself right after that, and then it's all about his life and the tragic thing in his life. Dude, you killed somebody. What about their life? Okay. I'll admit, I'm going into this. I don't have a good feeling about this guy, so maybe I'm not being fair to him, but that's just the vibe I'm getting.
Let's go back to the night of the shooting. Take us back to that night. You were going to the store. Let's start at the beginning.
I was going to Target to do my weekly grocery shopping. Sunday nights was the only nights, well, Sunday after we mentored the kids, we would always go grocery shopping and do our cooking for the week. So I wanted to go to Target, and I headed out, and that's the last time I've been home.
Since then? You never went back since that day. Then we all have heard the 911 call. On that 911 call, you had mentioned that there had been a number of break-ins in the neighborhood. Why were you a community watch person? How long were you involved in that, and why did you become a community watch person?
In August of 2011, there was a home invasion. A young lady was home with her 9-month-old baby, and they broke in her sliding glass door. She barricaded herself in the upstairs bedroom, and my wife was home by herself, and she saw the people that burglarized her run through our backyard with their belongings. And even though my wife wasn't certain what happened, that was enough to scare her and shake her up. And I promised her I would do what I could to keep her safe.
Your gun was legal. You had a legal weapon in the state of Florida.
Yes, sir.
Why did you feel?
Okay, well, I just want to, before they get into the gun thing, he didn't follow up at all. Of course, that's Sean Hannity. He's not a journalist. He doesn't care about getting to the truth of things. He doesn't care about being challenging to anyone that is, not against him. So he's not going to ask the tough questions. But the thing about the whole neighborhood watch thing, is I understand it, is that there was no neighborhood watch, really. He appointed himself as the neighborhood watch guy. So yeah, okay, and he's making himself out to be like, oh, you notice how he mentions the baby and everything, and he's trying to make himself out to be this hero. He's trying to paint this portrait like, oh, I just want to help, and a lot of the history that I've heard about this guy is that, and of course Hannity is not going to bring any of this up, but he has been reported as having problems being, with this whole tough guy thing, pushing people around, trying to be a badass. He tried to be a police officer. He couldn't do it. He criticized the local police publicly. So yeah, this guy was just looking for some shit, is what I think. I don't know. Maybe that's not totally fair, but that's entirely the impression I get from reading about all this. So yeah, the neighborhood watch thing, he appointed himself as a neighborhood watch, and he's carrying around a gun, so that now he's asking him another T-ball question. It's not a softball, it's a T-ball. These are all T-ball questions. Okay, I'm not even an eighth of the way through the video. Okay, so let's go.
Did you feel the need to carry a gun? A lot of people maybe have a weapon inside their home, but you decided to carry yours. Why did you think it was necessary to have a weapon with you, and did you carry it at all times?
I carried it at all times except for when I went to work.
Yeah. A lot of this case legally, and we're going to get to Mark in a few minutes here and ask him about a lot of the legal aspects, because there's so many of them in this case, has to do with stand your ground. You've heard a lot about it. And I was just curious, prior to this night, this incident, had you even heard stand your ground?
No, sir.
You'd never heard about it before?
No.
Wow. Now.
Wow, yeah, that's, how is that relevant? And who cares what... Okay, but the whole thing with stand your ground is, everybody is putting that as like his big defense and everything. I don't think that's going to work. Me personally, I don't think that's what's going to get him off. There might be something that gets him off. Probably will be something that gets him off, but what I don't get about that is everyone's saying that he was defending himself. Why do they not think about what Trayvon Martin was thinking, though, when all this was happening? I mean, some strange guy's following you around. You're just walking home, and some strange guy's following you around, and then he gets out of the car, and he comes at you. What's going through your mind in that situation? And we don't really know everything that happened. It sounded like to me that Zimmerman sort of started the whole thing and then started getting his butt kicked. And so he decided he was just, instead of, fighting back, or he knew the police were coming, instead of just waiting on the police, he decided to pull out a gun and just kill the guy. Because he could. And then he immediately jumped up and said, oh, self-defense. Okay, let's continue.
Now, it was very interesting, in the 911 call that everybody has heard, you said that all of a sudden you found somebody, he looks suspicious, he may be on drugs. That was one of the earlier comments that you made in that 911 call.
And what's so funny is, I believe I heard, or I read, that the cops were actually, I believe the dispatcher actually thought that he was the one who was drunk. So
What made you think he was suspicious, and what made you think that he might be on drugs?
I felt he was suspicious because it was raining. He was in between houses.
It was raining? That's why he was suspicious? Oh, look, there's a guy walking in the rain. Wow, I better call the police. Wow, that's really suspicious.
In between houses, and he was walking very leisurely for the weather.
He was walking very leisurely for the weather. This guy... Oh my goodness, if this gets out to the jury pool... oh goodness. I mean, he's digging himself a hole. He sounds like a fool. He sounds like he's just making it up as he goes along. But they probably gave him the questions, you know. They probably said, here's what we're going to ask you. Be prepared for it. And they probably prepared for this. I don't know that. That's speculation, but of course. But it wouldn't surprise me. It does seem a little bit scripted here. I mean, the way the questions are rolling out and the way he's just sitting there and then waiting on the question and then answering the question, and then Hannity doesn't have a follow-up. He just asks another question. It doesn't seem like a dynamic sort of interview. It seems a little not scripted but planned, if that makes sense.
It didn't look like he was a resident that went to check their mail and got caught in the rain and was hurrying back home. He didn't look like a fitness fanatic that would train in the rain. He just seemed like...
Weren't there overhangs, though?
How is this making any sense? I don't get the rain thing. The guy can't walk in the rain without being looked at as suspicious. I'm not getting this whole story. It just doesn't make any sense. Why don't you just admit that he's a black guy walking at night and you just don't know who he is, and he's a black kid, and you just think he's probably doing something because he's a black kid? Why don't you just admit it? I mean, I was going to give him the benefit of the doubt, you know, and he's just making it worse. Guy walking in the rain? Come on, man.
So he was walking, he wasn't standing still? And he was walking closer to the house, which is back from the sidewalk?
Yes, sir.
Am I understanding that right?
The overhangs are just in front of the front doors.
Yeah. You said he started from almost the beginning in that 911 call. You said he came towards you and he seemed to reach for something in his waistband. Did you think that was a gun?
I thought he was just trying to intimidate me.
Notice the questions here. I keep in, you know, I didn't want to stop it this much, but it's just so outrageous. I mean, he's just totally setting him up. You know, it's like I said, it's a T-ball. Did you think that was a gun? You said this, and you know, notice the dead guy doesn't, you know, this is totally coming from his story. You know, I'll be very surprised if there's a challenging question. This is all questions coming from Zimmerman's story, his bullshit story, and they're just propping that up there for him to echo the whole thing again.
To make you think that there's a gun?
A weapon.
Of some kind?
Possibly.
You said in that tape, something's wrong with him, he's checking me out, I don't know what his deal was.
He's checking you out. He's checking him out because the guy's following him around like a creep. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, Hannity, come on, can't you ask something challenging? Just one thing?
So it's almost from the very beginning, you felt, are you saying on that 911 tape that you felt threatened at that moment when you said that to the dispatch?
The leading question. I mean, just one leading question after another. I mean, come on, man. I mean, you just set the ball on the tee, let him knock it out of the park.
No, not particularly.
What did you mean with, I don't know what his deal is, he's checking me out?
The way he was coming back, and I was on the phone, but I was certain I could see him saying something to me, and his demeanor, his body language was confrontational.
There was a controversy from early on, George, where there were some in the media that, quote, hired expert voice analysts and on certain networks, and then they ended up having to recant and rescind their analysis, where they said these, quote, expletives get away with this all the time. Do you remember what it was that you said specifically on the tape?
Punks.
Punks. It was not a racial epithet of any type.
No, and I can tell you that when the police played it for me in the station, it was clear as day.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're talking about. He said fucking coons or something like that. If that's what they're talking about, there's no way he said punks. I mean, the coon word, the word that sounds like coon, I mean, you don't get punk out of that. So, yeah, I'm not buying that.
You said, and then we get to the issue where you said on the 911 call that he's running. You said that to the dispatch. Is there any chance in retrospect, as you look back on that night and what happened, and the nation obviously is paying a lot of attention to this,
yes, sir,
trying to maybe get into the mindset, because we also have learned that Trayvon was speaking with his girlfriend supposedly at the time, that maybe he was afraid of you, didn't know who you are?
No.
Wait a minute. Hannity actually asked him a halfway challenging question there, and he said no. Interesting.
You don't think that? Why do you think that he was running then?
Maybe I said running, but he was more.
You said he's running.
Yes, it's like skipping, going away quickly.
Skipping. He was running. Now he's skipping. He was in the rain. He was skipping. You know, he had a can of iced tea. It was awful.
But he wasn't running out of fear.
I mean, it sounds like a 12-year-old. He's in the rain running and skipping, and he has a thing of iced tea.
You could tell the difference?
He wasn't running.
So he wasn't actually running.
So he was running, now he's not running. This is why the lead investigator wanted to arrest the guy, because he just contradicts him. He started off the interview contradicting himself. That's all he does is contradict himself.
No, sir.
Okay, because that's what you said to the dispatchers. You thought he was running. Let me ask you this. At that point, we can hear the unbuckling of the seatbelt, hear you opening the car door, and this dispatch asks you at that point, and this became a very key moment that everyone in the media focused on, and the dispatcher asked you, are you following him? And you said yes. Explain that.
I meant that I was going in the same direction as him, to keep an eye on him so that I could tell.
Yeah, and what's the difference? I meant that I was, you see how he's just parsing everything? He's trying not to, you were following him. Just fucking say it. I mean, this is ridiculous. I was going, what I meant was I was going in the same direction as him. That's what I meant, It's not following, no.
What did you do from that moment forward? Because this is where we get into this minute gap in this case, and what did you do from that minute forward when the dispatch said, we don't need you to follow him? What did you do next?
He said he was following him. Now he's trying to trace back, so just keep that in mind. He's already said, I wasn't following him, even though he said he was following him. He said, yes, I'm following him. So now he said, no, I wasn't really following him. So let's see how he responds.
Walked across the sidewalk onto my street, Retreat View Circle, where I thought I would meet a police officer that I had called.
So you did not continue to follow him at that point?
No, sir.
All right, so you continue from there. You sounded at that moment on the tape, though, a little bit distracted. What was the distraction? That you were looking for him, or?
I wanted to make sure that, I believe they asked me for my address, and I wanted to be sure that nobody was lingering and could hear my address and then come back. And I was making sure that there wasn't anybody that was going to surprise me, and just trying to give them an accurate location.
Because they said, you know, can we meet you here at a certain location? You said, have them call me.
Yes.
Why did you want them at that point to call you?
I hadn't given them correct address. I gave them the clubhouse vicinity. However, I was walking through to my street, Retreat View Circle, and I was going to give them the actual street number and name.
How long was it, George, after that you saw Trayvon again? Because you said you stopped, that you did not continue pursuing him. When did you next see Trayvon Martin?
Less than 30 seconds.
Okay. Where exactly were you at that point? And how far away were you from your car at that moment?
I'd guess about 100 feet or more.
So you never went further than how far approximately from your car?
I'd estimate it to be approximately 100 feet.
So you never went further than that from the car?
No, sir.
Okay. And so at that point, Trayvon is, all of a sudden you turned around and there he was?
Yes, sir.
What happened next?
He asked me what my problem was.
Expletive problem.
Yes, sir. And I was wearing...
Did you? Oh boy, did you notice that? Yeah, make sure you get that in there. Let's make sure we make sure that everyone knows that, you know, he was helping him out there. Basically, let's make sure everyone knows that the guy you killed was, you know, he swore at him.
Rain jacket, and I had put my cell phone in my jacket pocket as opposed to my jeans pocket where I normally keep it, and I immediately went to grab my phone to this time call 911 instead of the non-emergency. And when I reached into my pants pocket, because that's where I keep it out of habit, it wasn't there, and I was shocked. I looked up and he punched me and broke my nose.
One shot.
Yes, sir.
So he said to you, you have expletive, you have a problem. Those were the exact words you used. You remember it?
Do you have a problem? What's your problem?
What's your problem? And you said to him, I don't have a problem.
Yes, sir.
You reached for your phone.
I reached for it as I was saying, no, I don't have a problem.
And at that point, you just got hit?
He was already within arm's length from me.
And was that the punch in the nose that broke your nose?
Yes, sir.
Right there, and you went immediately down to the ground?
I don't remember if I went immediately to the ground or if he pushed me to the ground, but I ended up on the ground.
What do you remember happened from there? Because there were police reports and descriptions that you gave, and that you were a little bit dazed, obviously, and at one point you said that you wanted to stop him from hitting your head on the cement.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you told the police?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so after that first hit, what happened next?
He started bashing my head into the concrete sidewalk. As soon as he broke my nose, I started yelling for help. So I was disoriented, and he started slamming my head into the concrete.
Which is where the lacerations came from.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we gotta give him some more help. You gotta mention those lacerations, right?
You said it was like your head was going to explode, was a comment that you had given to the police.
Yes, sir. He continued to punch me in the head.
How many times would you estimate that he punched you?
Several. More than a dozen.
And hitting you hard. At what moment did you, because you said you feared for your life, at what moment do you remember when you literally, do you remember when you thought, I may die? Is that, because you said that you feared for your life. Do you remember the exact moment when you felt that?
In hindsight, I would say when he was slamming my head into the concrete and I thought I'd lose consciousness. I didn't know what would happen. I just want
to interject here and say that's where Trayvon fucked up, was he didn't knock him out. Obviously, he's trying to make the the case that these were, you know, he wasn't just getting his butt beat. His life was in danger. Trayvon should have hit him a little harder against that concrete, and it would have knocked him out, and he'd still be alive.
That point.
And how close was the concrete to the grass? Because a big issue is also the grass stains that you had.
Of course, the irony is that Trayvon Martin would have gone to jail that night for knocking him out.
Your clothes. And you had made a statement to the police that you wanted to get to the grass. Was that to protect your head from getting banged into the cement again?
Yes, sir.
How close was that in proximity?
It butts up to the concrete.
And were you able to get to the grass?
Yes, sir.
And how did you do that?
I guess you could say shimmy. I mean, he was straddled on me with his full weight, and I would try and sit up and push myself down. And whenever I would sit up, that's when he would take the opportunity to slam my head back down and punch me in the head and continue to...
This guy had 2 little cuts on the back of his head. Yeah, he was getting his butt beat, you know, but it was just 2 cuts. I mean, it wasn't, you know, he didn't have extensive bruising. He didn't even have a concussion, I don't think. I mean, he didn't lose consciousness, so it's doubtful he had a concussion at all. You know, he was just getting his butt kicked. That's all there is to it. I can't see how he had his head slammed into the concrete more than 2 or 3 times. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
Hit my nose.
Was he talking to you a lot during this fight, when he was beating you? Because you're saying he's beating you and pounding your head into the cement. Was he talking to you during that time?
Yes.
And he was saying?
Cursing, telling me to shut up, and then finally telling me he was going to kill me.
And he said those words. And he said it. When did he first see your gun?
After we were on the ground, I shimmied with him on top of me, and it made my jacket rise up. And he, being on top of me, saw it on my right side.
What happened after that?
How does he know that? How does he know that Trayvon saw him? That should be the question. Like, how do you know that? How were you able to discern that he saw your weapon?
I felt him take, he had, after...
I mean, that just sounds like ad hoc, doesn't it? It just sounds like ad hoc.
He had, after he couldn't hit my head on the concrete anymore, he started to try to suffocate me. And I continued to push his hands off of my mouth and my nose, particularly because it was excruciating having a broken nose and him putting his weight on it. And that's the point in time when he started telling me to shut up, shut up, shut up.
Why did he tell you to shut up?
I don't know.
We heard the screams on the one recording from a neighbor that was calling the police, and there's been some dispute whose voice that is. Was that your voice screaming, or was that Trayvon Martin's voice screaming?
That was my voice. Absolutely.
That was your voice?
Yes, sir.
And the police even said at one time they heard 14 screams. You were screaming that loud?
Yes, sir.
And you said to the police at one point that he put his hand over your mouth. Do you think that was to silence you from screaming?
Yes, sir. I believe he, from what the investigators told me, he knew that I was talking to the police, and I was yelling so that I believed that the police officer was there and they just couldn't find me. So I was yelling in the hopes that they were in the vicinity and they would come when they heard me yelling.
Do you remember when you yourself reached for your weapon? Do you remember that moment?
Yes, sir.
Tell us about that.
This got really convoluted and mixed up, because he was talking about how, you know, he's getting his head slammed and then he's trying to shimmy around, and then, you know, he's covering his mouth, and you know, when he shimmies, it got all mixed up in there. Okay, because he sees the weapon, and I don't know the order of events here now. It just seems all mixed up.
At that point, I realized that It wasn't my gun. It wasn't his gun. It was the gun.
Did he say anything? 'Cause
What? What does that mean? What does that mean? It's your fucking gun.
he say anything? Because you said he was talking a lot about the gun. Did he say he noticed the gun?
He said, "You're gonna die tonight," and took one hand off of my mouth, and I felt it going down my chest towards my belt and my holster, and that's when I didn't have any more time.
Do you think you acted more out of a conscious thought? I mean, I know these events happen very quickly. Do you remember consciously thinking, I've got to grab my gun? Or did you just do it? Was there a conscious thought that went through your head that you thought you were going to die and that you had to take this, you had to get your weapon and fire?
I'd love to give you an answer.
You don't know.
It just happened so quickly.
Mm-hmm. There was an eyewitness that was out from the very beginning that in fact did tell the police the night of the shooting that he saw Trayvon on top of you and did see the beating. There is no witness to the actual shooting itself. Right? Correct?
Besides myself.
Besides yourself.
Yes, sir.
And much.
That's so funny. Besides myself, since the other gentleman happens to be dead. Oh, how convenient.
There's one report, or a police report, that actually said you didn't know after you fired, you thought you missed?
Yeah, I didn't think I hit him, yes.
Yeah. So what happened immediately after the shooting then, George? I understand one guy came out, he said he had a flashlight, that he spoke to you, and you said to call your wife, tell her what happened, that I shot somebody. Do you remember that conversation?
The conversation I had with the gentleman, or?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You do remember that conversation. And he did talk about it, and what his suggestion is that you were very matter-of-fact about it. Do you remember what you said to him? Do you think you were in a state of shock? When did you know that Trayvon had died?
When I went, probably about an hour after I got to the police station.
After the shooting, you saw that he was laying there and obviously injured. There was a moment where you realized that he was shot.
Like I said, he sat up and he said something to the effect of, "You got it," or "You got me." I assumed he meant, okay, you got the gun, I didn't get it, I'm not going to fight anymore. At which point, I got out from under him.
Is there anything you regret? Do you regret getting out of the car to follow Trayvon that night?
No, sir.
Do you regret that you had a gun that night?
No, sir.
He doesn't regret getting out of the car to follow Trayvon, which he had no business doing, and they told him not to do it. And also, you notice how the wording there, he said to follow him, and he said, well, he said, no, I don't regret following him. He's agreeing that he did follow him.
Do you feel you wouldn't be here for this interview if you didn't have that gun?
No, sir.
You feel you would not be here?
I feel that it was all God's plan, and for me to second guess it or judge it.
Is there anything you might do differently in retrospect?
No, that's the quote that I really got my ire when I read about it, and just to hear him say it live, it makes me sick. It makes me sick to my stomach when people say stupid shit like that. In other words, hey, you know, it's not, I couldn't do anything about it. Everything's God's plan. I mean, I killed a guy. So what? It's God. What can you do? You know? What a douchebag. I mean, I don't know if he really means that. He might just be trying to appeal to the people, you know, to more and more people that are taking his side on this whole thing in the realm of public discussion, who will just be happy that he's even mentioning the word God and saying something like that. But I don't know if I think to the most true believer out there, it's even more insulting. I would think that you're basically throwing up your hands, and you're not taking responsibility for your own actions, and you're you're just saying, well, it's all part of God's plan. You know, we just have to accept that I killed the guy, and that's that. And, you know, and if I hadn't have acted irresponsibly, maybe it wouldn't have happened, but oh well, it's God's plan. All right, that's all I'm going to say on that. I could really get pissed if I keep going.
You might do differently in retrospect now that time has passed a little bit.
No, sir.
You know, the detective said, you know, that you had detected.
He wouldn't act any differently at all. He wouldn't do anything different. I mean, nobody. Even if, like, you know, I've been in, you know, car accidents and stuff where it wasn't my fault, and even in that situation, I go, well, you know, if I had just, you know, delayed, like, you know, if I'd have just delayed myself coming out of that store or whatever and gotten in the car, you know, if I'd have just counted my money a little closer, you know, I would have missed that accident, you know, shit like that. You know, of course he in his mind, if he's a normal person, he would be thinking that way. But you know, he can't. I don't think he's very bright, for one thing. But I don't know how to take all that. He could just be trying to avoid any sort of admission whatsoever, but it just sounds like he's digging himself even further down.
He quoted you saying, "The bad guys always get away." You also said that in the 911 tape. Did you have a feeling that there were a lot of people that do get away with crimes? In other words, were you sort of predisposed in your mind in some way to think that criminals get away too often?
Not in general. I think in our neighborhood, there's geographic advantages for burglaries.
Do you have any idea, why do you think Trayvon would have confronted you the way he did? I made a comment on the air one day, and I got beaten up pretty bad for saying this could have all just been a terrible misunderstanding or a mistake. Do you think maybe, is there any possibility he thought you were after him and you thought he was after you, and there was some misunderstanding in any way?
I've wrestled with that for a long time, but I can't. One of my biggest issues through this ordeal has been the media.
Now, before he asked him a similar question, and he completely denied it. You know, maybe I'll try to roll back, and we can roll back and listen to that. But before, when he asked him a similar question, he completely denied it, and now he's saying he struggled with it, and you know, of course he thought he was following the guy. He was following the kid. And you're a young black kid walking through a neighborhood and some guy's messing with you. Of course you're going to think the worst. And he didn't know the guy. Of course. I mean, I've seen people make the ridiculous argument that, oh, he was a neighborhood watchman. Like, that means anything. He's just a guy in a car and getting out of his car to chase him. You know, it's absurd. Okay, so I cut him off in midstream here.
The media, conjecture, and I can't assume or make believe.
The parents of Trayvon Martin, they lost their son. This is your first interview. What would you like to tell them?
I would tell them that, again, I'm sorry. My wife and I don't have any children. I have nephews that I love more than life. I love them more than myself. And I know when they were born, it was a different, unique bond and love that I have with them. And I love my children even though they aren't born yet. And I am sorry that they buried their child. I can't imagine what it must feel like. And I pray for them daily.
Would you like to?
And he has to bring out, oh, I pray for them daily. No, you just pray for yourself so you don't have to go to jail. Which is what you deserve. I mean, you deserve something. Because you took somebody's life that didn't deserve it. And you acted irresponsibly.
You face second-degree murder charges, a possible life sentence. Do you think about that?
Yes, sir. Every day.
What do you think about regarding that? Do you feel in the end justice that people will believe you and that people will understand? Or are you that confident that you had a right to do this?
It's a
to defend yourself.
Yes, sir. It's a finite situation I've been placed in where I am confident in the system. I really have no choice but to believe still in the system.
The one witness that you first met, the guy with the cell phone that I mentioned, asked about your demeanor. He was right after the shooting. He was the first person, I guess, on the scene?
Yes, sir.
First person you saw. And he said that you looked like you had been, quote, butt whooped, like you had had a fight, and that you were asking, call my wife, just tell my wife. But, you know, he was acting like it was nothing. Is that how you were feeling at the time? Because you didn't find out, you said, till later that Trayvon had passed away.
No, I knew that I had discharged my firearm, and I was scared, nervous. I also thought the police were going to come and see me with a firearm. And
this is something I don't understand. One of the witness that caught all the yelling and screaming on his cell phone or on his phone, I don't know if it was his cell phone, but he said he knew that Trayvon was dead. I mean, Trayvon died right there. He didn't live very long after he got shot. I mean, he was shot point blank range, right dead in the chest. I mean, something just isn't adding up here. If a guy looking out his window knows that the guy's dead, I mean, he was obviously dead. So I really don't understand this line about, oh, I didn't know he was dead until, you know, an hour later.
And shoot me. I mean, I was terrified.
Did you look over at Trayvon? You obviously at some point recognized he had been shot, because
yes,
you didn't know it in the beginning. Did you look over at him at any time and realize he was in really bad shape?
No, sir.
At no point. And how long was it between the time you shot him to the time the police actually got to the scene?
It felt like forever. I'd say 15 to 30 seconds.
It was that quick?
Yes.
It felt like forever, but it was 15 to 30 seconds. It was that quick, but it felt like forever. The guy's so full of shit.
I can't guess to what their motives are. I would just ask for an apology. I mean, if I did something that was wrong, I would apologize.
So far, he doesn't think he did anything wrong. And he hasn't apologized for doing it. He gives this mealy mouth, oh, I'm sorry for what happened, but yet at the same time, it was God's plan. And so, therefore, I don't really question it. We shouldn't question it. It's God's plan. So how can I really say I'm sorry? Because I don't really mean it, because I didn't really do anything wrong, and I don't regret anything. And, you know, so it's just God's plan. So how can I even question it in the first place?
Do you feel the overwhelming majority of media rush to judgment?
Yes.
With few exceptions?
Yes, sir.
The funny thing is that they're saying that the media rushed to judgment. The media didn't even report this fucking story until just enough outrage, and a lot of it was online and stuff, you know. Yeah, this did not get reported in the media. It took like, I think it took at least a month before this was a big story. So saying that the media rushed to judgment is a huge joke. It's just ridiculous.
That vary so much. You know, if you wanted to look into that camera and tell the American public something about George Zimmerman and about this case with Trayvon Martin that has gotten such media attention, what would you want to tell them?
First, I'd like to readdress your question when you asked if I would have done anything differently. When you asked that, I thought you were referring to if I would not have talked to the police, if I would have maybe got an attorney, if I wouldn't have taken the CVSA, and that I stand by. I would not have done anything differently. But I do wish that there was something, anything I could have done that wouldn't have put me in the position where I had to take his life. And I do want to tell...
How about not pulling out your weapon and aiming it at his chest and firing it? How about that? That would have been one thing I can think of right off the top of my head. And remember, the police showed up like 15 seconds later, but yet that took forever.
My wife, my family, my parents, my grandmother, the Martins, the city of Sanford, and America, that I'm sorry that this happened.
You see, I'm sorry that this happened, but you know, it's just God's plan. So I shouldn't even be really sorry that it happened, because that's God's plan. So I don't make any sense, really, do I?
I hate to think that because of this incident, because of my actions, it's polarized and divided America. And I'm truly sorry.
Okay, so that's the interview. My closing comments, I don't really have any. I'm a little tired, unfortunately, when I'm making this. I just think that after watching that, it was pretty much not a surprise. I was hoping there were going to be some mitigating factors that maybe would make what I read not sound so bad, but it's actually worse. Hearing him say it and seeing his face and his expressions, and he's pretty much a self-serving guy is what I get out of all this. And there's just no remorse whatsoever. He doesn't think he did a damn thing wrong, or at least that's what he's presenting. And no, I think he acted irresponsibly. He was trying to be a tough guy. He's out there with his gun. You know, I'm a tough guy and I'm going to take care of this. And he, you know, he has a history of that, from what I understand. So all of this, I hope, is probably going to wind up with him walking, and he's going to be a celebrity. Or, you know, at least for a time. He'll be able to do interviews for a while. He might write a book. You know, he'll probably get some kind of work out of this, if he doesn't go to jail. And he may even get it if he goes to prison, which I think he should, just based on everything I've seen now. And another thing, they didn't even address the call that Trayvon and his girlfriend were engaged in at the time of this, where he didn't say anything like, you know, do you have a fucking problem or anything like that. He said, why are you following me? I really wonder if I suspect that call and her testimony is going to be a pivotal point for the case, because that's really that's the nearest thing we have to a witness that's sort of coming from Trayvon's perspective. Since Trayvon is dead, and he can't, obviously we can't have a seance in the courtroom and bring him back. So it is one thing that I agree with, and it is a tragic event. And I think that people have to be responsible with their weapons, and he was irresponsible with it. I mean, he gives the people that have the carry license a bad name, in my opinion. Most people are responsible with their weapons. If you're going to carry the weapon, know when to use it. And you don't shoot to kill when you're just getting your butt kicked. I'm sorry. Maybe something will come out in this case that's going to make me change my mind, but the more I see and hear from Mr. Zimmerman, the less impressed I am with him. There's been nothing that has made me think that he acted righteously. So we'll see what happens.